All right. So after Senator Bernie Sanders' endorsement of former Vice President Joe Biden, now former frontrunner Senator Elizabeth Warren has officially endorsed Joe Biden's presidential campaign. Senator Warren released this video this morning praising Biden's long history in public service. She continued to give the Democratic message of unity to transform the U.S. and called on supporters to donate. Let's bring in CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe with more on this breaking story. So, Ed, what does Elizabeth Warren's endorsement add, given that both former President Barack Obama and Senator Sanders have already given their endorsements? We can expect more to come down the line, but this is a significant one.
It is. It's another feather in the cap, guys, something that was anticipated because at this point, she was really the last big name out there and certainly one of his last certainly the last big opponent who had yet to endorse. But as she makes clear in that video, she's with him, makes a good point that, nobody I ran against I agreed with 100%, but I always appreciated, she said, that Biden would listen, understood her position, and was respectful about it. He's getting a lot of credit this week for playing nice with his opponents. Maybe that's a lesson to everybody in politics and in life. If you're nice to everybody, you'll eventually get what you need. And in this case, he needs Warren's support. There are liberal voters out there who are still skeptical about the former vice president. The party is eager to appear to be, at least publicly, united and ready to take on President Trump. And with 202 days or so to go until the general election, the former vice president now, and we reiterated this yesterday, gets to enjoy an otherwise, uncontested opportunity now to take on the incumbent president. The earliest somebody has clinched the Democratic nomination since John Kerry back in 2004. And if you think about the last two contested campaign cycles for Democrats, they were pretty acrimonious. This one is proving to be anything but that.
So then moving forward, what can we expect Warren's role to be? Will she hit the campaign trail?
In whatever form that will look like in the next 200 days or so, yes, we can expect that she probably will. The one thing she did immediately this morning is ask her supporters to donate at least $5, $10, whatever they can right now, to the Biden campaign. Bernie Sanders did that. Barack Obama did that. He needs that help. The Trump campaign and the RNC announced they raised north of $200 million in the first quarter. They have at least $200 million plus at their disposal right now. The Biden campaign and the DNC certainly do not. Maybe you don't need that kind of big cash in an era when you're campaigning virtually. We'll see. And there are plenty of Democratic super PACs that are running ads critical of the president right now to give Biden some air cover, especially in the battleground states. But money is going to be needed in one way or another to organize, whether that's going door to door or doing it digitally. And we also expect, it hasn't been announced yet, but don't be surprised if she pops up on something that Biden is doing later today. He is announcing, or he's meeting virtually with essential non-medical workers, people like grocery store employees, others who work in the service industries that are able to continue working right now, but aren't medical professionals. They aren't doctors and nurses. Warren has introduced legislation that would help those people and maybe get them some kind of a pay raise at some point in the future. And she was tweeting about that last night, shortly after the Biden campaign announced that he was doing what he's doing today. So if you're reading tea leaves the way those of us in the political unit do, don't be surprised if this is their first joint appearance alongside these workers who Warren has become increasingly concerned about. There are many of them, of course, in her state and across the country, and they're the kind of people that supported her campaign and the kind of people that Joe Biden is going to need to be voting for him.
So, Ed, a couple of things that we talked about in the past. We've started to see some high-profile supporters of Senator Bernie Sanders now coming out in support of Joe Biden based on the fact that Bernie Sanders is endorsing the former vice president. Can we expect to continue to see more of those, or will there continue to be a faction of that the very passionate supporters that Bernie Sanders has that don't see themselves going for Joe Biden? And in a related question, I guess, how much of Biden's platform has moved further left because of the fact that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren had such passionate supporters throughout this whole process?
We've seen Biden shift on policy, at least slightly, in a few regards. One, on Medicare eligibility. He now says that it should begin at age 60 as opposed to 65. That's a slight concession to Bernie Sanders, who believes it should begin in your 50s and would help boost the argument for a universal government-run healthcare system. on education, or at least how to pay for college. Biden now embraces a plan that looks a little more like what Sanders and Warren have been pushing for: relief for lower income, middle income college students. Again, not free college for everybody, as some liberals would like, but something closer to that. And we know that Biden and Sanders have put together 6 working groups that are going to focus on issues like immigration, healthcare, climate change, to try to see if there are other ways over the course of the summer that perhaps Biden will tilt ever so slightly to the left. And he's made the point in interviews, did with the Associated Press yesterday, did over the weekend as well, might with our colleague Tony DeCopel for CBS This Morning tomorrow, that while he knows Biden is the nominee, he knows that he will never fully embrace his positions. He is hoping that Biden shifts ever so slightly more to the left on some of these issues because he believes it would help them find the voters needed. As for prominent Sanders supporters, yes, Cardi B is now on board with Biden. They did that great Instagram Live last night where Sanders asked her to check out his nails, so not nearly as impressive as hers. But you haven't heard yet, for example, from the squad, the 3 liberal congresswomen who endorsed Sanders, were prominent surrogates for him, and have so far said they're not necessarily there yet, at least with Biden. Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Omar from Minnesota, and of course Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And CBS News picked up on some comments she made to a group in New York last night, where she seemed to acknowledge that the questions about Biden's past behavior with women remains and should still be an issue that is explored a little more. There have been accusations from a former Senate staffer of his. CBS News hasn't totally independently corroborated, but we've spoken with her. An accusation she made about an incident back in 1993. Ocasio-Cortez was asked about it during this session, and she said, yeah, look, this is something that still should be talked about and considered because there seems to be too much of this in his background. Does this become an issue that dominates the conversation in the next 200 days? Remains to be seen. But certainly there's an element of the Democratic Party or the political left that is still worried about it.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much.
Ed O'Keefe. Thanks, Ed.
Take care.